to Decon the Precon, where we are deconstructing the preconstructed. This is your host Bad Kitty, and this is the premiere episode of a brand new series where we sit down with old and new preconstructed commander decks and deconstruct them. We would be breaking the precons down into their most basic parts to see how well the spells synergize and what the ultimate game plan for these precons are. Before we get too deep into this episode, make sure you head on over to our socials and give us a follow to keep up with the channel and what we have been doing and brewing. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. For our first episode, we will be breaking down the Abzan Precon Corrupting Influence from PHYREXIA All Will Be One. You can find the original deck list down below. This precon is a green, white, and black mid-range commander deck, trying to slow down the game and apply poison counters and pressure life totals. But first we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is, what is poison counters? Poison counters are counters that can be applied to a player through many different means, whether that's from a spell's effect to a creature having either Infect or Toxic. The main goal of poison counters is to have your opponents reach 10 counters where they immediately lose the game. Infect on a creature means that if that creature were to do combat damage to a player, instead of doing damage, that player would receive poison counters equal to that creature's power. Also, if an Infect creature were to deal combat damage to another creature, instead of doing damage, it would apply its power's worth of -1/-1 counters to that creature. Toxic, on the other hand, can only give the player it deals combat damage to as many poison counters equal to its toxic level, but the creature still applies combat damage like normal to both creatures and player. Now that we have that all cleared up, let's get into this deck and decon the precon. Breaking down any deck, there are 5 essential categories that most of your spells will fall under. That is ramp, card advantage, removal, game plan, and game closer. Let's start with ramp. The ramp category can be defined as spells that you cast to help you ramp up your production of mana to get you further along in your game plan. There are usually 4 types of ramp. Artifact ramp, which is artifacts that can be cast and used to tap for mana or to filter mana into the correct type each turn. Land ramp, which is usually spells that are cast to go get you additional lands from your deck to either your hand or the battlefield. Creature ramp, which is usually creature spells that tap for mana or allow creatures to be tapped for mana. And spell ramp, which is usually instants and sorceries that can be cast to net you additional mana of certain colors, but is temporary as that mana usually goes away in between phases. In this precon, there's an emphasis on artifact, creature, and land ramp, so our ramp is slow but sticks around, speeding up our production each successful spell. There are also ramp spells that synergize with our game plan, allowing us to do additional things once we have the corruptive passive activated. Next is card advantage. Card advantage is basically any form of getting deeper into your deck to find the cards you need, from playing card draw to exiling cards off the top of your library, or even milling your deck to give you grave advantage. All of that can be seen as card advantage because it is letting you see more of your deck than your opponent is seeing of theirs. There's too many different ways to have card advantage to try and list here, but I feel like they can fall into 2 major categories, which are advantage over time and burst advantage. Advantage over time is usually a permanent or permanence that allow you to keep gaining card advantage off of triggers. This is the long-term plan for card advantage, where you land something like Moldravine Reclamation and a sack outlet to turn your creature deaths into card draw. Another good example is the commander of the precon, Ixchel, Scion of Atraxa. This commander grants you card advantage from other players' deck once you have given that player 3 or more poison counters. Once you have that corrupted passive, for each player who has 3 or more poison counters on them, on your end step you exile the top card of their library, and as long as they remained exiled, you may cast them and spend mana as though it were any color to cast those spells. Turn after turn, this is giving you as many as 3 additional cards to play with, as well as depriving your opponents from their resources. Next is burst advantage. This comes in many shapes and sizes, but can be boiled down to a spell that once cast or played allows you to have a one-time burst of card advantage. A great example in this precon is Painful Truths, which for 2 colorless and 1 black, you may draw 1 card for each color of mana you spent casting it. So if you paid 1 green, 1 white, and the mandatory 1 black, you would draw 3 cards. Within this precon, there's a good amount of both types of card advantage, so digging through your deck to find answers or the win shouldn't be hard at all. On to removal. Removal is essential in every deck to not only slow down the game and stop problematic pieces from running away with the game, but it's also good for removing pesky permanents that are stopping you from playing the game how you want. It's good to have a variety of removal spells, from destroy to exile and even sacrifice effects, to make sure you have enough answers for the wide variety of problems you can face in a typical game. There are 2 main types of removal that you would typically find. There is spot removal, which is a spell used to destroy or exile another target permanent. These spells usually only get rid of one thing, so it's important to use them on the right spells and have good timing on when and when not to remove something. And then there is mass removal. These are spells that do exactly that. Remove one or more permanents and or remove one or more permanent type. Whether that's through exiling everything, to destroying all creatures, or even giving everything -X until end of turn, making quick work of both indestructible and destructible creatures. This precon carries a good amount of both types of removal because it has good recursion of spells from the graveyard, so wiping the board isn't too scary for this deck. In fact, there's a lot you can gain from having your creatures die. Now onto the core of the deck, the game plan. This section is going to be the most varied from deck to deck, but broken down into its most basic form. This is where you find a theme and find cards that synergize with that theme and help progress that game plan. Your theme is usually designated by your commander, but some decks have flexible enough commanders that you can basically take it in a plethora of directions. Looking at you, partner commanders. For this precon though, our theme is poison counters and the corrupted passive. So we have a ton of spells that apply poison counters passively, creatures that apply poison counters directly, and other spells that proliferate those counters through their effect. The corrupted passive is a new mechanic, so there isn't too much support for it in the deck, outside of new cards from the precon and the PHYREXIA all will be one set. However, together the cards work well in tandem to keep your game plan moving forward with card advantage, life drain, and mana fixing. And lastly, the game closer. It's self-explanatory. These are spells that help finish out the game or put you so far ahead that it would be hard to lose the game. The best example of this in the precon is Noxious Assault. For 3 colorless and 2 green, your creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn, and whenever a creature blocks this turn, its controller gets a poison counter. Coupled with the synergy of spells in the deck and your game plan being driven along through many different outlets throughout the game, this spell should have no problem taking out all 3 opponents at once if you played your cards right. In closing, this precon seeks to dole out early poison counters onto your opponents to then quickly gain pressure and advantage through both the looming threat of a poisonous loss and the solid grind of advantage through the corrupted passive found in spells throughout the deck. At 1 colorless and the Abzan casting cost, your commander, Ixchel, Scion of Atraxa, is the embodiment of what this deck is supposed to do and does it to Phyrexian perfection, looming over the forefront of the battle, corrupting all that stands in the way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and to follow us on our socials. The link tree is posted down below. And feel free to leave us a comment telling us if you like the video and a precon you would like to see make it onto this list.